So let me read through this article. I'll show you the links that I referenced while writing the article and add additional information when and if necessary. While there appears to be relative calm following the 12-day war between U.S.-Israeli forces and Iran, the conflict itself and the implications it has both for the region and the world represent a continuous threat to global peace, stability, and prosperity. This was not about Iran's nuclear program. This has always been about regime change and the U.S. subordinating the entire region and disallowing any peer or near-peer adversary to exist in the region as part of a much wider agenda to control the entire planet, to maintain primacy over the entire planet, what they like to call U.S. international leadership. U.S.-Israeli war was premeditated and used negotiations as cover. Let's talk about that. And this was something I warned about during negotiations. I said that they were being used for cover. The U.S. would use Israel to provoke the war, and then the U.S. would wade into it. It's not because I'm psychic. It's because the U.S. wrote the whole plan on a piece of paper in 2016. They wrote the whole plan out, and they've stuck to it ever since. The U.S.-Israeli war is predicated on supposed concerns regarding Iran's nuclear program and alleged violations of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. The U.S. appeared to pursue negotiations with Iran despite possessing no authority under international law to do so. The U.S. had no right to be talking to Iran about its nuclear program. Nobody authorized them to do so. They are not the arbiter of global nuclear energy and nuclear programs, let alone any authority to act if negotiations were perceived to fail. While the fighting officially began with strikes carried out by Israel on June 13, 2025, virtually all military capabilities Israel possesses are the product of U.S. aid, including billions of dollars of weapons and other support specifically tailored for waging war against Iran. Many of the capabilities the U.S. pays for, develops, pays for, and sends to Israel are custom tailored for a war specifically with Iran. Following the Israeli strikes, U.S. President Donald Trump himself, despite being engaged in negotiations with Iran when the strikes began, declared them excellent. And that's based on ABC News. Trump tells ABC Israel strikes on Iran excellent and warns more to come. So again, at that point, the U.S. wasn't even trying to pretend the negotiations weren't a trick. They were an obvious trick. They were meant to lure Iran into complacency as they prepared to provoke this war. Again, as per their own plan on papers 16 years ago at least. Other U.S. sources admitted to ABC News that the U.S. provided exquisite intelligence used to carry out the attacks. In other words, not only did the U.S. give Israel all this custom-tailored military support to attack Iran, it also facilitated the attack itself. Let's get into a little bit of that. Israeli media has claimed the U.S. participated in the initial strikes through mid-air refueling. The U.S. openly moved all these assets into the region. Europe also contributed similar assets. And of course, that's what they were used for. These warplanes are not capable of flying all the way to Iran and back on their own. They need to be refueled mid-air. And the U.S. is the only country that has significant assets capable of doing so on such a large scale. Other sources, okay, this is from Middle East Eye. Israel and U.S. modified F-35s to enable Iran attack without refueling, sources say. So whichever story you prefer to believe, whether the U.S. refueled Israeli planes mid-air or the U.S. worked with Israel before the attacks were carried out to modify these planes so that they didn't need mid-air refueling, both activities were significant U.S. commitments to Israel to enable this attack long before it was carried out, which means as U.S. negotiators sat down at the table with their Iranian counterparts, they already knew that this was not to actually really negotiate with them. It was to serve as cover for these attacks that they have planned months, a year or more ahead of time, which is what I say in the article. So there was this joint program to extend the range of U.S.-made F-35 warplanes, a project that would have taken months or more to complete, together with direct strikes carried out by the U.S. itself, which would have taken weeks or months to prepare for, to train for, and prepare for, and set up the logistics for, are indicative of how premeditated the war was and how negotiations were used as cover to carry it out.
سرچ مدیا